Hello, students. Welcome to the class of the third story, How Much Land Does a Man Need? In my previous classes, I have covered two stories prescribed in your syllabus. The first story that we took was Grief. The first story that we took was The Three Dancing Goats, and the second story that we covered was Grief. Now we begin with the third story, How Much Land Does a Man Need by Leo Tolstoy. Let me give you a brief description about Tolstoy. Tolstoy was born in 1828 and he died in 1910. He was a Russian novelist, short story writer, philosopher, social reformer, and he had a happy youth. Then he underwent a great spiritual experience and founded a new religion, Tolstoyism. This religion was based upon his conviction that the whole message of Christ is that ye resist not evil. It says, the main tenets of his religion are renunciation of violence and wealth, improvement of the inner self, compassion for all living things, and abolition of governments and churches. It is said that Mahatma Gandhi, with his acceptance of the doctrine of non-resistance, became one of his most important followers. Tolstoy has written great important works like War and Peace, and the other works that include Anna Karenina, The Death of Ivan Lynch, and Other Stories, 23 Tales. The story that is prescribed in the syllabus, How Much Land Does a Man Need, is a story which is based on a moral fable tradition. The theme, according to the title of the story, is about greed. It is about temptation. But the way the two key words, that is greed and temptation, have been put in by Tolstoy with such artistic restraint, freshness of approach, and with subtle irony. So the story, just to take up the brief summary of the story before we begin with the unit-wise description of the story. When the story begins in Unit 1, we listen to the conversation between two sisters, the elder and the younger. And the elder sister has come to visit her younger sister in the country. And the elder has been married to a tradesman in town and the younger is married to a peasant. Now these two sisters are talking to each other and they are analyzing the pros and cons of their lives as to which one is more happier, who is without temptation, who is without facing any kind of evil. And listening to the conversation of these two women or these two sisters is Fehom, the master of the house, who was lying on the top of the stove, and he listened to these women's chatter. And then he thought, when he heard the conversation, when he thought about it, he started believing that yes, farmers or villagers or peasants were poor people. The whole day was spent in tilling Mother Earth, and nonsensical ideas would not come into their mind because they didn't have time for it. But there is one single sentence that he utters, speaking to himself, is that if I had plenty of land, I shouldn't fear the devil himself. So this is actually the catch line of the whole story, where he says, if I had plenty of land, I shouldn't fear the devil himself. And lo behold, the devil was sitting behind the stove, and he heard all that was said. And then the devil said, I'll quote from the text, we will have a tussle, we'll have a fight. I'll give you land enough, and by means of that land, I will get you into my power. So these are the words of the devil. And obviously, Fehom is not aware of this. So from here, from Unit 2, begins the journey of Fehom towards achieving lots and lots of land. Each unit categorically, as it advances to the culmination of the story, to the climax of the story, has Fehom gathering more and more piece of land through hook and crook, and the greed and the temptation that is behind acquiring more and more of land doesn't get exhausted. On the contrary, it keeps on increasing, and there comes a time when the greed is so much so that Fehom is ready to do anything to have lots of land to his possession. He keeps on moving outside, he keeps on expanding his land, he keeps on shifting from one place to another with his family. And during this course, naturally in this process, he has acquired a lot of land, but there isn't a single line in the whole story which depicts that Fehom has reached to the level of satiation. He has reached to the level of where we can say that he's satisfied with the amount of land that he has. And therein comes a turning point in the story where he meets where he meets a trader coming, and that trader narrates to him an episode where he says that he talks about bashkirs. Bashkirs are those people who have a lot of land to their disposal, and the land almost is as free land as one can get. So Feom, when he listens to the story of the trader, he decides to go to that place because he has heard from the trader that there is so much of land available that he can take as much as he likes. So this was like probably the best thing that Feom had ever encountered in his life, and he reaches to the place where he meets the Bashkirs. And when he talks to the chief said, "Okay, yes, I have understood that you want land, but we have a few rules to that." And when Feom questions him as to what is the price of the land, he says, "Our price is always the same." And what's the same price? It's 1,000 rubles a day. I'll repeat, it's 1,000 rubles a day, and Feom is not able to understand as to what does it imply. He says, "A day? How do you measure it? Now, how many acres would I get for that?" He said, I'm not aware of how many acres can you get, but we have only one condition, and the condition that we have is that each and every inch of land is yours, but only on one condition, that you have to return on the same day to the spot where you started, and if you're not able to come back, your money is lost. So Feom, when he just listens to this proposal, he finds it very interesting. He says, "Oh my God, that's too much of land. Like if you start from point A in the morning and then you have to return to point A again in the evening. So as much as you walk one way, you have to cover it back the same way." So he's very delighted, and then Feom decides that tomorrow early morning he's going to begin his journey. And then he puts another set of questions, that how does he know that this particular land will belong to him. And for that he says that the chief says that whenever you are moving forward, you dig a hole or you put some peas or you pile up the turf, so that whenever you are coming back, you know where you have to come back, plus that particular area which has been covered by you can be put into your account. So it's all settled, and Feom as was very excited for the proposal, and he doesn't sleep well, and then the next morning all is ready. So all the bashkis, they get assembled at one place, and the chief is sitting, and Feom takes out his money and he puts it on the cap, and then he takes his outer coat and everything, and then he begins his journey. So he looks at the vast stretch of land that lies ahead of him, and he's excited with the proposal that, oh my God, as much as I cover, that land is going to belong to me. So he starts his journey, he keeps on moving, and while during the course of journey, the sun is getting hotter, and then he keeps on pulling off his clothes, and he starts trotting, he starts trudging, he's tired, he sits and has his bread and he drinks some water, and then finally there comes a time where he realizes that he has covered a lot of area, and then probably he looks at the sun and realizes that he should be going back, because if he doesn't reach well on time, he's going to lose his money as well as he's going to lose whatever land he has taken into possession. So the journey back is really painful and very torturous, because he realizes that in the heat of the moment, in the excitement, he had walked so much that he will not be in a position to reach back to his original position. Now Feom at this point of time becomes a little afraid of death, but he cannot stop. So sun was almost closing to the rim, and it was as red as blood, and it was about to set. And then he realizes, and he thinks that probably his time has come, and he won't be able to keep the possession of the land that he has. And then comes a thought in his mind where he utters to himself, "But will God let me live on it? I have lost my life. I have lost my life. I shall never reach that spot." So at one point of time, Feom realizes that Though he has covered a lot of distance, he had taken so much land to himself, but he cannot probably return back, and everything is going to be lost. So he realizes at the end of the story, he takes a long, deep breath and he runs up the hillock. He sees light there, and then he remembers his dream. His legs, they give way beneath him, and he falls forward and reaches the cap with his hand. The chief, he is excited that finally, with lot of hardship, with lot of difficulty, Pheom is able to reach to the cap where he had placed it. He puts his hand over it, but then as soon as he touches it, the servant of Pheom, he comes and he tries to raise his master, and he realizes that the blood was flowing from his mouth and Pheom was dead. So the Bashkirs, they started clicking their tongue. They showed their pity, and there was no option left. The servant, he started digging with his spade, and he dug a grave long enough for Pheom to lie in, and he buried Pheom in that particular land for which Pheom had, strived for, wanted for, but failed to achieve it. So when Tolstoy titles the story, How Much Land Does a Man Need? He puts a question behind it. And the question is very, very artistically answered in the end, that a man needs only 6 feet of land to be buried. That's all what Pheom had to his hand. That's all what Pheom could get despite putting so much of effort, so much of hardship. So very, very subtly, Tolstoy has highlighted that human greed, human temptations have no end. People do not realize that running after materialistic things, running after so much of having money, so much of good things, they forget that sometimes it may cost their life, and this is exactly what happens to Pheom. So students, this is just the broad outline of the story. In tomorrow's class, we are going to take up the unit-wise discussion, because going through the story unit-wise is very interesting, because that way we understand the journey of Pheom, what emotions, what feelings does he undergo, and how in the end the climax is built up by Tolstoy. Thank you, students.